Well, we've arrived at the moment where I have the pleasure of introducing Lauren Groff to you. So I will first share some biographical details and then another brief thought. Lauren Groff is the New York Times bestselling author of Fates and Furies, a finalist for the National Book Award. She's also the author of The Monsters of Templeton, shortlisted for the Orange Prize for New Writers, Delicate Edible Birds, a collection of stories, and Arcadia, a New York Times notable book, winner of the Medici Book Club Prize, and finalist for the LA Times Book Award. All of those books for sale out there, coincidentally. Her work has appeared in journals including The New Yorker, The Atlantic Monthly, Harper's, Tin House, One Story, McSweeney's, and Plowshares, and in anthologies 100 Years of the Best American Short Stories, the Pushcart Prize, Best of the Small Presses, Penn O. Henry Prize Stories, and 3 editions of Best American Short Stories. Lauren has been on a long and I suspect exhausting book tour for this particular most recent book. I love this book. I'm such a fan of it. It's interesting. The book came out a while ago, and yet people seem to still be talking about it. Even now, after the president's appreciation of it became public knowledge, a president who is unashamedly an intellectual and a voracious reader, people are still talking about this book. I heard a conversation the other day on Diane Rame, and they were talking about this book, and they were arguing with each other. I think that's because this book deals with the difficult subject matter of the much maligned and abused topic of marriage, which is wonderfully open now to many more people than it was in the past. The book tackles this topic with 2 deeply flawed narrators who look, dare I say it, like people I know, married people I've seen boldly hacking away at the definition of marriage, people I've confronted in my own bathroom mirror, rogues of the art of marriage. This book is unwilling, though, to provide an antidote to this troubled topic, but it presents it instead as a curious and flawed institution, showing us a kind of thermodynamic collision. Thank goodness for writers who tackle essential truths and who are unafraid to do so boldly. Please welcome Lauren Groff.
Hi. I too am glad you're alive. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm so delighted to be here. It feels almost as if I'm home, but in a home where they really care about books. And I want this for Gainesville. Can you all just come to Gainesville, start up Functionally Literate, a literary function, start up Burl Press and just redo it up there. That'd be great. Raquel and Hunter, that was really wonderful. I was actually having almost LSD flashbacks, not LSD, but like flashbacks, because that's the last book, Arcadia. My dad fell off a garage roof when I was 9 years old, and I watched it happen. And it's like occurred in all of my fiction since then. So like I was sitting there going, oh my God. And Hunter, their faces shining like stolen coins. I mean, I couldn't get over that line. That's beautiful, damn it. I can't even steal it. It's so good. Okay, so I am on the road, and I've been on the road forever. But this is one of my last public events, probably until the next book, which, since I don't have a next book, could be in 3 years if I'm really fast, or 5 to 10 years. So thank you for coming to my last ever book thing. Just kidding. All right, so I'm just going to read a little bit from both parts of the book. The first part is in the sort of narcissistic man's voice or point of view. And the second part of the book is in his wife's point of view. Okay, here we go. After the incomprehension and the raw fish came the long flight, then the short. At last, home. He sat watching through the window as the staircase approached the plain over the sun-shot asphalt. Spring rain had blown through as they taxied in and just as swiftly was gone. He wanted his face in Mathilde's neck, the soothe of her hair. 2 weeks as playwright in residence in Osaka, and as long as he'd ever been away from his wife. Too much. The rolling staircase fumbled and missed the door 3 times before it clicked in, eager as a virgin. How lovely to stretch this long body of his, to stand and breathe for a few moments at the top of the stairs, savoring the oil and manure and ozone smell of the little Albany airport, sun on his cheeks, wife inside the building waiting to take him to the pretty house in the country, his early dinner. His happiness stretched out its wings and gave a few flaps. He hadn't accounted for the other passengers' impatience. It wasn't until he was already midair that he felt the hand hard in the middle of his back. How outrageous, he thought, pushed. Now the pavement was billowing up toward him like a flicked tablecloth. One distant windsock tugging eastward, the crenellated roof of the airport building, a shine of the sandpapery steps in the sunlight, the plane's nose somehow peeling into his vision, and the pilot stretching his arms in the window. And Lancelot had twisted entirely around by the time his right shoulder hit the edge of a stair and he was looking at his ostensible pusher looming out of the dark cave mouth at the top, a man with tomato-colored hair and face, lines embossed on his forehead, wearing Madras shorts of all ugly things. Lancelot's head hit the tread at the moment his rear and legs did, if somewhat lower, and things got a bit swimmy now. And behind the man was the flight attendant who'd snuck him 2 mini bottles of bourbon after he'd spent a few minutes exercising his old actor's charm on her. Brief fantasy of her with skirt up, legs around his waist in the plastic bathroom before he banished the image he was married and faithful. And she was in the process of putting her hands slowly up to her mouth as his body made a satisfying thunk-a-thunk-a rhythm in sliding downward. And he kicked out toward the rail with the instinct to stop his fall, but felt a curious, sharp clicking in the shin region, and all in that general direction went numb. With delicious slowness, he came to rest in a shallow puddle, his shoulder and ear seeping up the sun-warmed water, his legs still extended up the stairs, though his foot, it appeared, canted outward in a manner unbefitting the owner's dignity. Down now, the tomato-headed man was coming. A moving stop sign. His footsteps rocked some locus of pain in Lancelot. When the man was close, Lancelot held up the hand that wasn't numb, but the man stepped over him. Lancelot got a flash up the tube of his shorts. Hairy white thigh, dark genital tangle. Then the man was running over the shining asphalt, swallowed up by the slab of a terminal door. The flight attendant's face came into view, soft cheeks and hoarse nostrils blowing, and he closed his eyes as she touched his neck, and someone somewhere began to shout. Backlit, the fracture was tectonic, the plates of him overlapping. He was given 2 casts, a sling, a crown of gauze, pills that made his body feel as though it were encased in 3 inches of rubber. As if, had he been on the same drugs when he fell, he would have hit asphalt only to bounce delightedly high, startling pigeons midair and coming to rest on the airport roof. He sang falsetto to Earth, Wind, and Fire all the way to the city. Mathilde let him eat 2 donuts, and his eyes filled with tears because they were the most amazing donuts in the history of glazed donuts, the food of the gods. He was full of joy. Having been on OxyContin after my children were born, it's so true. They would have to spend the summer in the country, alas. His play was in rehearsal and he should be there for it, but really, there was so little he could do. He couldn't climb the stairs to the rehearsal space, and it would be an abuse of power to make his dramaturg carry him. He couldn't even climb the stairs to their tiny apartment. He sat on the building's staircase looking at the pretty black and white tiles, Back and forth Mathilde went, gathering the food, the clothes, everything they needed from the apartment on the second floor down to the car double parked in the street. The building manager's child stuck her shy brown head out the door and looked at him. "What ho, spratling," he said to the kid. She stuck a finger in her mouth and took it out all wet. "What is that nutty Bobo doing out there on the stairs?" she said, tiny echo of some adult. Lancelot brayed, and the building manager peered out a bit more ruddy than normal and took a look at the cast sling crown. He nodded at Lancelot, then pulled his kid and his head inside and shut the door fast. In the car, Lancelot marveled at Mathilde. What a smooth face she had, lickable, like a vanilla ice cream cone. If only the left side of his body hadn't suddenly become buried in concrete, he would leap over the emergency brake and treat her the way a cow treats a block of salt. "Kids are jerks," he said. "Bless their hearts. We should have some, Em. Maybe now that you're my nurse for the rest of the summer, you can have some license with my body, and in all the lust and frenzy will beget the sweet wee thing." They weren't using birth control, and there was no question that either of them was defective. It was clearly a matter of luck and time. When he wasn't high, he was more careful, kept quiet, sensitive to the stoic longing he'd felt in her whenever he brought it up. "Those jugs of yours spectacular?" she said. "They seem pretty spectacular." "It's time," he said. "It's more than time. We've got some cash now, a house. You're ripe. Your eggs might be getting a little wrinkly, I don't know, 40. We're risking some springs going sproing in the kid's head. Though it may not be so bad to have a dumb kid. Smart ones are off as soon as they're able to escape. Dumbos stick around longer. On the other hand, if we wait too long, we'll be cutting his pizza for him until we're 93, so we got to do this thing ASAP. As soon as we get home, I'm going to impregnate the heck out of you." "Most romantic thing you've ever said to me," she said. Down the dirt road, up the gravel drive, graceful dripping limbs of cherry trees. Oh gosh, they lived in the cherry orchard. He stood at the back door watching Mathilde open the French door to the veranda, go down to the grass to the new and sparkling pool. There were two tanned and muscled men gleaming in the last sun, unrolling a strip of sod. Mathilde in her white dress, her cropped platinum hair, her slim body, the sunburst sky, the shining muscle men. It was unbearable. Tableau vivant. He sat suddenly. A hot dampness overcame his eyes. All this beauty, the stun of his luck. Also, the pain that had just surfaced, a nuclear submarine out of the deep. Okay, so things happen. And yes. And then, okay, so things happen, and then Mathilde sort of takes over the storytelling, or she doesn't herself. So what I'm going to do is read a tiny bit from her side, and then we're going to have, like, I think it's an off-kilter Q&A. That's what I heard it was going to be, which is great. I'm really happy with off-kilter. Okay, this is from the Mathilde part of the book. Mathilde had one picture of herself from when she was tiny. Her name had been Aurélie back then. Fat cheeks, gold hair, the only child in a large Breton family. Her bangs clipped from her face in a barrette, scarves on her neck, lacy socks to her ankles. Her grandparents fed her galette, cider, caramels with sea salt. The kitchen had rounds of camembert ripening in the cabinet. It could knock you down to open the door unsuspecting. Her mother was a fishwife at the market in Nantes. She'd rise in the blue night and drive to the city and come home mid-morning with her hands chapped and glittering with scales, cold to the bone from contact with ice. Her face was delicate, but she had no education. Her husband had wooed her with his leather jacket, his pompadour, his motorcycle. Small things to trade for a life, but at the time they'd seemed powerful. Aurélie's father was a stonemason, and his family had lived in the same house in Notre-Dame-des-Landes for 12 generations. Aurélie was conceived during the Revolution of May 1968. Though her parents were far from radical, there was so much excitement in the air that they didn't know how to express themselves except animally. When it was impossible for the girl's mother to hide her pregnancy, they were married with orange blossoms in her hair, a slice of coconut cake in the freezer. Aurélie's father was quiet, loved few things, putting stone on stone, the wine he made in his garage, his hunting dog he called Bibiche, his mother who'd survived World War II by black marketing blood sausages, and his daughter. She was spoiled, a happy and singing girl. But when Aurélie was 3, the new baby came. He was a fretful and screaming creature. Still, he was cooed over, that wizened turnip in blankets. Aurélie watched from under a chair, burning. Colic arrived in the baby, and the house went piebald with vomit. Aurélie's mother walked around as if shattered. 4 aunts smelling of butter came to help. They gossiped viciously, and their brother showed him his grapes, and the aunts chased Bibiche from the house with a broom. When the baby at last began to crawl, he got into everything, and the father had to build a gate at the top of the stairs. Aurélie's mother cried during the day in her bed when the children were supposed to be asleep. She was so tired. She smelled of fish. The baby liked best to crawl into Aurélie's bed and suck his thumb and twirl her hair, the snot in his nose catching, so it sounded as if he were purring. During the night, she would slowly move both of their bodies toward the edge of the bed so that when he finally fell asleep and rolled onto his back, he'd tumble out and wake shrieking from the floor. She'd open her eyes in time to watch her mother rush in and pick the baby up with her swollen red hands and, scolding in whispers, carrying him back to his own crib. Okay, so that's Mathilde, who's actually Aurélie. So yeah, are we gonna do a little Q&A, or should I just keep talking? Because I'm super happy to do either one. I don't want to subject you to my talking.